It is 5:33. We'll begin this workshop session. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Ms. Dean?
Here.
Ms. Begay?
Present.
Ms. Murillo?
Present.
Mr. Terrazas?
Present.
Myself, Taboriana, present. Let the minutes show that all members are present. So I will do pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among American cultures. We have public input on agenda items next. There's nobody present other than Victor Arumbula and Dr. Spoleta. That are not on the board. So, Victor, do we have any public input? No. We'll go back to the board norms. And we'll start out with actively listen to all perspectives.
Close the loop, responding to concerns and questions as a unified board.
Model the professionalism we expect from all members of the district and community. Customer service orientation.
Assume positive intent.
Be positive and responsive.
Okay, with that, we will go on to the next item, which is the purpose of the meeting, which is approval to finalize the superintendent's evaluation. Okay, so we have provided us evaluations start to finish. This evaluation, there are two types of evaluations that we'll be working on with Dr. Spoleta. One is an interim evaluation that will be due before January of 2023. And then his final evaluation, which would be at the end of the school year, will be in June of 2023. The evaluation for the June 23 will be prepared about that time, and we'll modify the evaluation that we'll do as we see necessary from the interim evaluation, the 6-month evaluation versus the final evaluation.
Before we look at that evaluation instrument, could we look at the start to finish PowerPoint on there's a couple PowerPoint slides that I think would be helpful about this evaluation. They're after evaluation errors. I think we went through everything else.
Looking at evaluation errors.
Yeah, I think if we could look at those slides, I think those are important for the evaluation instrument to know that.
Okay.
I think we did the timing. I think the errors are the next ones.
Does Victor have this so he can put it up in case are the four that are there, us here, or
That's just myself and Daniel.
is it working double time?
Oh, we got.
No, I'm just kidding about the four versus the two. Who would be the other two?
It's just, you know,
Okay.
it's right there. This is the Google Meet.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so failures to provide clear guidance. This is the one you're talking about. Starting here? Or errors? No.
Evaluation errors. I think all of that information we should look at that because it goes along with the evaluation.
If you go back a little bit further before the board evaluation, there's also like superintendent evaluation purposes and goals. I think that would be important to review.
Where is that? At the very beginning or?
This one is, there's no page numbers.
I know.
I think it's right before, yeah,
Okay.
one more. Yeah, right after renewals. It talks about superintendent evaluations, purposes and goals.
Okay, so start, I don't know if we need to read any of these aloud or just. Yes, I will. Okay. So superintendent evaluation purposes and goals. One area is strengthening relationships. The ways to do that are regular and anticipated outlet for resolving conflicts. Another one is provide dialogue mechanism. Third one is gauge the superintendent's job satisfaction. Four is to provide a mechanism for commending and or rewarding good work. Assessment and improvement. Provide basis for fairly assessing weaknesses and strengths, including those of the board. Document the communication of board concerns, accountability, track the progress towards goals. And another element is protect the district's interest and provide documentation for just cause. Best practice. Take a look at your board practices. Do they help/hinder the superintendent? Consider asking the superintendent simultaneously to evaluate the board. Best practice. You consider what you can do as a board member to keep the process positive and growth experience for both parties. Okay. One thing, a couple of things that there that we should look at are the superintendent's evaluation of the board or our own evaluation to be done simultaneously. What are our thoughts on that?
Well, I do remember this summer, it had been brought up to do some board evaluation training with the New Mexico School Board Association. I think it was a 1-hour training on how we would evaluate ourselves. I think that was in June, so it was kind of, at the time, not successful. But I think that 1-hour training that the School Board Association could offer us would be helpful. when it comes to evaluating ourselves as a board?
I've seen a lot of the documentation from the School Board Association, and I wouldn't want to limit ourselves to that, but I do think we should review mechanisms for evaluating ourselves. But also, what would be interesting is to have the superintendent's input on that as well. That would be very different than what our policy has.
Right, I think we should get various stakeholders to evaluate the board. I definitely don't think we should just be evaluating ourselves.
I think even staff, teachers, students would be good to get their feedback.
There's mention of surveys farther down the documentation, and surveys, I think, are an excellent tool. And we've discussed that in terms of how we can prepare a survey very quickly, have it done via Google Docs
Forms.
or Google Forms. And it would be something that we certainly could formulate as to be part of this evaluation process. So I would suggest, or I would propose, that we go through the evaluation process, document what it is we want to put into the evaluation, and then go back to the possibility of doing surveys and use those surveys to collect the data that would help us complete that evaluation. If board members are okay with that. Christine?
Yes.
Ms. Paget?
Yes.
Mr. Perat?
Sir.
You?
Yes.
Okay, then let's go ahead and start doing the documentation. How about you, Dr. Superintendent? Dr. Superintendent?
Mhm.
No, I think surveys are great.
Do you agree with the simultaneous evaluation of the board as with your evaluation?
Yes,
And so if I could make a suggestion with the survey, if it could be an outside anonymous survey, so that's not an internal survey, and somebody like internally is managing the survey and see the results with an outside source that does the survey.
Well, I was thinking of creating the Google form, and I could create, when you do a Google form, you can create an Excel spreadsheet and giving you access to see those results as they come in. Would you want the survey itself to be anonymous, or would you want it to collect email addresses or name be optional?
I think that's optional as well, but what I'm thinking is so that we're completely neutral in getting the information, and so that it doesn't look like there's an inappropriation and, you know what I mean, looking at the data or expressing the data, so it's a neutral party that can manage it. That's just my idea.
but it doesn't need to be optional with your name, because this is my evaluation. I wouldn't want somebody just, they have to put their name if they're gonna evaluate me.
Oh, well, I was thinking for the survey is just not evaluating you, but asking
Just general
staff members, like,
questions.
what's going well with the district, what areas do you think needs improvement, and taking those items, you know, if we see across the board that safety is the number
I
one
see.
concern, we would include that in the evaluation, that's something people are really worried about.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
That was my idea for the survey. And if I gave you guys access to the Google Sheets, you know, Google Sheets documents everything. So if I went in there and deleted something, you would see that in the version history. I don't know if you still want to do a neutral party, but that was my plan, to have transparency with the board, that I wasn't messing with the
Oh, no, I
with
get
the
that.
results.
Well, and I think even to like, Ms. McGay brought up about wanting to survey the teachers and staff for the final evaluation of the school as well.
Right.
Yeah, so that, I think that should be a neutral party.
I think it particularly serves that because there are concerns raised about the board as well as there are about the superintendent, and either one of us being a factor in managing that input, I think might be a deterrent. And so if we have an independent party, particularly with the teachers, the community, less less cautious in that, in the sense that I think the board receiving those is not necessarily, I'm not concerned about there being any retaliation on the public in terms of job position, job description, placement, or whatever the case is. But certainly with teachers, that's a different story. So for that, I would like to propose that we look for an independent party to do the survey, not to do the survey, but to have the survey conducted. We'll put together the survey document ourselves, and the expectations, including options for self-identification if they want to or not. And then I would also like to say that we would do the second one internally through the board, in a mechanism that we can all observe as the input comes in. And so we can, that'll be an easy way for us to track it, and the history of it that will document the changes, I think might work well. So if there is no action taken here that will go forward for vote, but right now I'll put down for a recommendation that we'll present at the board meeting that we do that. Okay. So recommendation would be 2 surveys, 1 public, and 1 staff. And the public one independent, and staff one within board. Board. Are there any other things that we want to consider for the surveys?
Maybe a student survey.
Oh,
It might be hard at the primary grade level, but certainly secondary.
certainly, that's an excellent idea. These surveys. Do you have a suggestion on the venue? Would it be an independent, or would it be with the board, within the board?
I would say within the board.
I think so too. Does anybody agreement, or does anyone want to propose something differently?
I think that would be fine too.
Okay. The survey would be, would we like the survey to be, or expressions of whether it should be one survey for them to evaluate both the superintendent and the board, or should we have one survey for evaluating the superintendent, then another survey, each of the parties evaluating the board?
I'd say keep the surveys consistent throughout. That'd be my suggestion.
Agree with that.
Okay, so it'll be just one individual survey for each of those groups.
Yes.
Okay.
And then like span them out in timelines so that people aren't overwhelmed with getting all the surveys at once, and then they'll actually do the surveys. So like if we plan ahead, like 1 month is this one, and then 2 weeks later, you know what I mean? Something like that, just so that we have like a timeline, timeframe, and people will
Are
actually.
you thinking the end of the year survey or the middle of the year? 'Cause the middle of the year should be my giving you documents to show these things. Survey would be used for the summative at the end of the year.
I almost think that a beginning of the school year survey would be good and an end of the year, because we can see if progress has been made and what good things are happening. So we have a baseline and then another baseline.
I agree with that. Number one, because the result of the survey, when it first comes in, is a great mechanism to chart the rest of the months that follow, to identify things that need to be addressed quicker, sooner than later, if possible. So I would agree with.
I don't know. I think we need to follow the evaluation here in writing and use that survey as an extra document to use these ratings.
I'm not at the point where I would want to limit ourselves to what is in writing. And it's,
The survey is just to help supplement this information. It's not the evaluation.
No, but on the second page, it does say on the policy, may set schedules, require collaboration, call for staff input, and prescribe a specific form. And so as part of the rules and guidelines, doesn't that fall underneath there to do the survey, the beginning and ending? So it does call for the staff input prior.
So I only do this though twice. I do this at the middle of the year, at the end of the year.
I think it's a, to me, a survey is good just because it is correct, just to gauge like the baseline and then the end. How is it working? What's not working? What's the plan for action for next time?
I think the constraints are a consideration that, but they're not to limit our preference. And I would agree that the survey going forward is something that's essential. And one of the challenges that we faced in this current environment is the connection with the community. And your whole entry plan has focused on that.
Mhm.
And so this would be consistent with your entry plan. And matter of fact, it would be a good assessment of the effectiveness of your entry plan. And being that that's a large part of your evaluation, having this data would help us document the impact as well as identifying the successes and identifying the areas where we might want to stretch out.
I'm going to provide you a lot of documents for my mid-year that will show all of these things as well.
Agree. And so with the time frame being already mid-October, there would be probably the best we could do is something like about a 3-week span between the surveys. If we do one if we develop a survey and have it go out at the end of October, then have one go out after the Thanksgiving break, and then the last one go out before the Christmas break.
Okay. And may I suggest that the first one be the staff survey? Since they've already started school and we've already been here, new superintendent, and it helps gauge everything else. Because they're more involved in what's going on, and then as the community gets involved, because they're still having the community meetings and
Mhm.
everything else, then we can see it as it.
Yeah, I mean, I
goes
think it's a lot of extra data. I already have a lot of data from those stakeholders already.
The data you have would be largely from the meetings that you've conducted, and this would catch all those that weren't at the meetings,
Mhm.
and would be more comprehensive. So the data that you have, for lack of a better term, but from an audit sense and from statistics sense, is anecdotal and not necessarily representative of the community. If it were more of a selected sample size and sample size that we could use to assess the accuracy for its plus or minus factors in terms of the content. In other words, a margin of error. We don't have any, your data wouldn't provide that level of specifics. So if we do a larger survey, would give us more data, It won't give us something that's publishable in terms of the statistical value of the data. But it again will be a larger pool and give us more of an still anecdotal assessment, but
Well, I plan on providing you a large binder of each of these areas with documentation as well, so you're gonna have a lot of information.
that's good. I think that would result in better.
I think we have
evaluation.
5 areas here. I have 5 binders or 5-inch binders that I'm gonna have documentation in. So you'll have plenty of information.
5 1-inch pipe.
No, 5-inch, 5-inch.
5 5-inch binders.
Yes, one for each area.
Okay.
So you'll have plenty of documentation.
And then for the surveys, like for the staff surveys, could we consider even like within the 3 weeks, say like, we only get 50% and then extend that? That could be a recommendation. So if we get at least, 80% of the staff, then we consider that. If we meet the deadline, then that's okay. Because I think sometimes, I mean, depending on people out or sick or however, but I think that would help us really base.
I think the best way to do that is give them an amount of time to respond. The thing I would worry about in that kind of scenario is somebody sending more than one survey.
Well, we can set it up that they can't. I mean, if somebody could do it in a different email or however, but you don't, you know.
The staff one, yes, but
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
but if the staff one, if we're going to use emails, then that's going to be a deterrent for some people.
Well, I know that, but what I'm saying is like, so if we get, say, 80%, or like, so we have how many teachers, if we get that 80% of the amount of teachers, then we know, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we need to
yeah.
get 600 of these and we got 80% of that, then we know we're good. That's what I mean. I mean, I don't mean like, oh, he did it or she did it. I meant like as a bulk, a percentage of the bulk.
So
Makes sense.
what would be the barrier to keep somebody from submitting multiple evaluations given a longer period of time?
Maybe they had an issue after, I don't know. Or a success after. What I'm saying is that if we keep the time frame, but then too, as we look at it, and after that time frame, we don't have that percentage that we feel would be a good, adequate data to look at, then extend that. That's my recommendation. So if we only got, we got 3 weeks and we get 20% of the 600, okay, we need to push this along and maybe, you know what I mean? That's kind of my recommendation, is like some parameters, if we're gonna do this and look at it and be really make sure that we're getting the bulk of the staff for the surveys.
Okay. Victor had something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, it's just like, I'm sure Serena set up plenty of funds, but you can only fill it out once. And I honestly believe all staff members would fill it out. I don't think it'd be a deterrent on them not doing it. They're pretty good at this.
The deterrent would be to file more than one, and so
Yeah, you set the restrictions. It's very, very direct, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at this.
Yeah,
See, the goals,
we do them plenty
it's
of
right
times, and
after-
you only submit one.
It's the second
So,
page of this, and so
would that
They
require,
can
even
open the
talks-
link right after this.
would that require that they use
I thought you meant in here.
Oh,
district
but since we're
login
going over this,
or,
that's why I'm-
They would use their district.
yeah, that's where it would be then identifiable with the input. And we want to have it where it's not
So how do we
identifiable with the
include
input.
this in that?
Yeah, on the form. Well, depending on how you set it up, you can set it up anonymous.
Doesn't that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does make
Okay.
sense.
And
it-
I mean, the information is coming to us only, the board. And so I'm hopeful that staff members wouldn't fear retaliation from us for them being honest about what they seek and what they desire. But we can set it up so that it's anonymous.
Well, and the reason is that it's still new. I mean, we're a new board, new superintendent, things are still new. And so even to get honest, anonymous answers is to me always a good thing. I mean, because sometimes, you don't know situations people are in, or, you just don't know. So if you allow people to be honest anonymously, you'll get more, to me, I think you'd get more information instead of said, well, you know what, Lisa said this, well, Lisa, why did you say, you know what I mean? This is a small community, it is a small school district. And not that I'm just trying to make sure that we are very like careful with the data that we get and make sure that it's truthful data. Because I just, like, we did a big survey at the mine as well. And the people that were looking at the data were the ones making the changes. And so a lot of times it was, well, to me, when I see stuff like that as well, okay, how do we make sure that this is accurate and how is this correct? And, you know, when you do gather data, there needs to be protocols and how we do it.
So there's 4 different areas of the survey. So are you thinking you're going to do questions around each of those areas?
This is the part that we'll do after we put together the document. We'll take a look at what data, what questions we would want to ask that would reflect that. So it would be to each one of those, as well as anything else that might have come up that isn't necessarily a part of our document. And there are unique circumstances because this is such a dramatic change in administration. So one of the, I think the evaluations are kind of built on a consistent record of operation, and we're changing operations and wanting to get data or response on the effectiveness of the change, the perceptions of the change, good, bad, and different. I don't know if those are going to be in the evaluation itself. The other things that could be are the response of, what's that?
Oh, he's telling me not to look at this.
There's some extra pages in there. I'm not sure why they're in there.
Okay. So let's, okay, so basically what we want the survey to do is provide data that impacts the evaluation or allows us to assess the performance in the evaluation. And the other part is to address any other concerns that might be unique to this district and to this time. So which part of the evaluation is not supposed to be there?
There's just 3 pages. And then those pages after that, I'm not sure where they came from.
It says three of 4. It's the promotes educational opportunities, business and finance. And then there's some,
It starts before then. It starts with no page number and then another one with no page number.
Okay, CBIE is the first page of the evaluation.
Okay.
There's 3 pages there. Then you're going to find some other pages that don't belong there. And then you're going to find the 5 questions that you mentioned as focal areas.
So you're saying parts 2, 3, and 4 don't want to look at?
No, I'm not even sure where those came from. So look at the first 3 pages and then look at the five focus areas. I think those are the main evaluation areas.
So this evaluation of superintendent CBIE came from
The new policies.
the new policies. So we can still change this.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, can we use, so these are the 600? I mean, because we haven't passed this yet. So we don't have an evaluation of superintendent in our existing policies?
Yes, we do, but I don't think it has a lot of substance behind it. And,
I'd rather use this one as well.
it's not a question of, well, it is up to us.
Well, I mean, it is if you're not following the policy. I agree to not follow the policy and use this one because it's the newer one that we haven't voted on yet.
I don't know if there's a consensus of not following the policy. Let's take a look at,
Well, if you want to use the old policy, we can use the old policy.
This is really limiting.
The old policies, of course.
Mr. President, also, as a teacher, I sit on the Principal Evaluation Task Force, and they're revising the evaluation for principals, and superintendents are also on that board. But we were discussing at our meeting this weekend that evaluation could also be used for superintendent as well. And districts would have that option to add questions or standards based on their district and what boards would like. So maybe that's something we could look at after the task force is done with their work in May.
which task force is this?
It's Principal Evaluation Task Force. There's principals and superintendents, charter school leaders across the state that are working on leadership standards, and the staff surveys included in that. Rubrics are being created. So there's a lot of research going into this practice that we could adopt for our district if we choose to do that. But it would be alignment from the principals to the superintendent. They would have the same evaluation.
Who's conducting this?
It's PED, and West Ed is coming in as a contractor to help with the process. But like I said, there's representation from superintendents, charter school directors, principals, and a couple teachers are on the task force.
Do they have a timeline as when they expect to finish their product?
So we started the work last year. We got the recommendations that, and like I said, now the process is to develop those rubrics, what kind of measurement tools are going to be needed, walkthrough forms, all those supplemental stuff is being developed. But it should be done, I think the roll hearing will probably be in May of next year, and roll out, I think they're hoping for next school year.
Okay.
Just something
Thank
to think about.
Yeah, it'd be nice to anticipate that, but, just a side comment, the dictation from PED to the school districts, I don't know how well that's going to be received, because individual school districts have authority within its own parameters to do these kind of things, and to have something, it can't be, like, okay, we make this standard, you all have to adopt it.
No, I think it serves more as a baseline,
Okay,
more than anything else.
okay.
So, Mr. President, I guess my question is, so the evaluation for Dr. Spoletta is gonna be on these 5 areas that we gave to him in addition to this, CBIE. I just kind of wanna know where we're working towards, or what's the plan?
my kind of anticipation was that we would be working towards using the new policy, but not to rule out the old policy or make it a combination of the two. Oh, this is back here. Sorry, and Dr. Who generated this document?
The board secretary typed those out. Those are the things that we discussed at the board meeting.
This is a good example of what I mean by how this would probably be different than any other evaluation. If you look at just number one, address the legal issues that were left circulating after July regarding the complaints made to the Attorney General's office. Certainly no evaluation would probably have that kind of.
But that would be part of these things, either management or board in the actual evaluation, the data from that.
How so?
Because you're using the evaluation rubric based on that data. You're giving an overall evaluation based on those different areas: personnel, education, management, and board.
Well, I think like the legal proceedings would fall into management, ensures that all activities of the district are conducted in accordance with the laws of the state of New Mexico. I think we can make them fit within this evaluation rubric.
I was thinking in a more specific manner, but in a broad manner, yeah, that would work. Okay, so let's go over the, let me see if I can find the old policy. What policy it is? The superintendent's evaluation program.
208.
Troy? Okay, superintendent of schools. So there's no evaluation. It's just a matter.
There's like the superintendent shall, and it has a list of things they're supposed to do, but it doesn't have like a form
Mhm.
like our new policy does.
Okay.
Just adopt what we currently are proposing for policy. That's my suggestion.
You're saying that use this as a good ongoing template?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Go over them individually, the education. Okay. Administers the development and coordination, maintenance, and evaluation of educational programs, including special education programs. Supervises the methods of teaching, supervision, and administration in effect in the schools. Keeps informed of modern educational practices and thought by advanced study, by visiting school systems elsewhere, by attending educational conferences, and by other appropriate means. And keeps the public informed about modern education practices, educational trends, and the policies and practices and problems of the school districts. The district schools. One thing that I'd like to see here that's not there is to ensure a coordinated curriculum throughout the schools in the district. For instance, we had a discussion the last meeting, the last board meeting about the middle school may be electing a curriculum that's not consistent with that with the high school, doesn't lend itself to the high school's curriculum.
So I think the second one addresses that, supervises methods of teaching and supervision.
I don't see it addressing that.
Yeah, I think it does.
I think the first one, the coordination of the educational program, would be in line with making sure the curriculums are across the board.
Both of those.
I agree that it does fit in nicely there with the curriculum.
Okay. The management ensures that all activities of the district are conducted in accordance to the laws of the state of New Mexico, the regulations of the New Mexico Board of Education. There is no New Mexico Board of Education. It's the PED. It's the Public Education Department and the policy of the board. So that's just a correction we can make. Assumes responsibility for the overall financial planning of the district and for the preparation of the annual budget and submits it to the board for review and approval. This sidesteps the role of the finance committee. I would like to specifically put in the finance committee here to say that assumes responsibility in coordination with the finance committee for overall financial planning of the district for all the preparation of the, for the preparation of the annual budget and submits to the board for review and approval.
Finance committee is not responsible for the overall budget. The board is.
The finance committee in statute has a requirement for the development of the budget, to oversee the development of the budget.
So is the superintendent.
No argument there.
But that's not part of my evaluation, though. Maybe,
Working with the finance committee would be part of your evaluation.
I think that would be more under management, running management, but with effective procedures and effective controls. And so being effective would also be managing the committees that they're on and supporting.
if you leave this as a standalone, the way it is there is no assessment of that coordination with the finance committee. It is only as it's submitted to the board for review and approval.
Well, I think if he is not working with the finance committee and he's assuming responsibility for the overall financial planning, that would affect his rating. You could say you're not working with the finance committee, so you're going to get an unsatisfactory in that area.
It has to go to the finance committee before it goes to the board for approval.
Mhm.
Finance committee is an arm of the board.
This is, the finance committee is involved way before it goes to the board. So it's not a matter of reviewing it right before it goes to the board. It gets involved with it starting, I believe, in January. And it has certain steps that it go through.
We didn't this past year.
We didn't know.
No, it was, the budget was given to us
That's what this,
very, very late.
that's what this prescribes. It provides that the superintendent will do the budget and then submits it to us at the end for our review and approval. And that's what I have an issue with.
Can't go to the board unless it goes to the finance committee. I mean,
That's not the point.
this, I don't know why we're trying to change this policy. This is a statewide template that's
Oh,
being used.
we've been in the business of doing that for the last 2 months. The purpose of the policy committee is to do that. And if this were a policy committee discussion, there would be no reservation in terms of making changes if it fits what the members think should be there.
Submitting it to the board is almost the same as submitting it to the committee. The two people from the board are on that committee. They're the head of that committee.
It is, if you would look at that in a time frame, so the budget has to be approved by April, May. When is it the budget we send our approval? Somewhere in that time frame. So when would the finance committee get that document then?
Late March.
Okay. If you look at the statute, both Serena and I are familiar with the statute, it has a timeline for which the finance committee is responsible for looking, for putting together certain elements of the budget. And it precedes that.
Well, it's hard to proceed that when you get your funding from the state in March, so you can't proceed it very much.
Budgeting is an operational decision. It isn't necessarily a look at, okay, we have this much money, now let's see what we can budget. Budgeting is a matter of identifying priorities, looking at the current existing funding, not anticipating any changes unless they're known to be coming. But for instance, one of the big things that we have right now is a salary schedule. I would not like to get a salary schedule submitted to us 2 weeks before the approval of the budget.
The salary schedule is well on its way to being changed, and it'll be ready by March. It'll be ready to see what funds we have available.
With the work of the committee. And that's what I'm saying, is the finance committee is necessary to be engaged in those conversations and those decisions prior to the budget being submitted to us.
I agree with what's written on here. I don't think there's any need to change it.
But like right now, our last two finance committee meetings, we talked strictly on salary schedules. We're looking at it, we're trying to revamp it to benefit our teachers. So we're gonna look at it. We should be well prepared before the March deadline.
And may I add, I think the wording of, so we're looking at really one thing right now, which is the superintendent assumes responsibility for the overall financial planning of the district. I think that encompasses a lot. And I think if we put in other wording in there, it might narrow it down a little bit. I think when we are doing the evaluation, we know that is he working with the finance committee? Is he giving us the stuff as we ask? And that would be where we say he's outstanding, satisfactory, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory.
I couldn't disagree more. That is a parameter that is bypassed in this language. It's bypassed on the superintendent assuming responsibility for the overall financial planning. The budget has if it's not its most important role, it's certainly at least its second most important role is the budget, the management of the budget, the formulation of the budget. To give that away, to say the superintendent assumes the responsibility for the overall financial planning of the district, circumvents our authority. It circumvents our purpose.
I don't think it does. It's still statute that the finance committee does that.
So
And
why?
so if we disagree on things in this evaluation, what is the proper way to, like, do we vote on it at the next board meeting? Do changes get proposed? What is the process? Because I think right now we're agreeing to disagree. And so what is the next step in,
The evaluation tool is supposed to be a collaboration between the two of us.
Well, I was gonna say too, I agree with the language as well. I think that the idea of being responsible is all encompassing. So what does that include? It includes talking to the director, it talks about the finance committee, it's talking about with the state. So, I mean, we can't list every single person that he speaks to and has to manage. There's this assumption that he is taking the responsibility, whatever the statute of that responsibility is in this language. And so if we look at it that way, is he meeting with the finance committee? Is he meeting with Frank? Is he meeting with us? Is he meeting with the board? I mean, the state, is he meeting the statute? That is the responsibility.
I agree.
The process for that is that now we can have this debate, but certainly there is no action that's going to be taken here. The action would have to be taken in the public session in the form of a recommendation for that change, and then the vote would be taken to either accept or not make that change.
I thought we were doing approval to finalize. Isn't that an action item on our agenda?
It's not an action item in our agenda.
The work session is just to come up with a plan.
Yeah, and it is to finalize the final, what we're gonna develop is a recommendation for the board to finalize the evaluation document. It can include areas of disagreement. We can't, at this point, vote to approve or not approve anything that's discussed. So it's not an action item. And so the disagreement can continue and it may be in consensus at the time of the board.
And so right now there is a consensus. There's 4 of us that agree with it, that the language is correct and doesn't need to be changed. So what's the next process to this? So that
The consensus would be, I guess maybe that's an incorrect word. The vote is what would be the final decision. And if there is disagreement, any board member can raise a concern and that be part of the vote. But still,
So
the
when
majority rules.
So when we vote on it on Monday, it's going to be these as is right now. And if changes want to be made, we make them on Monday? Is that what you're saying? So like say you want to move to make that a change, that would have to be done on Monday.
Yes.
So we can't make any changes to this document right now.
No, the document is not, it's a template that we can change at any point. And it is not something that is restricted in terms of even adding on or deleting parts of the document.
Right now.
Yes, right now.
Okay. Unless we're in a disagreement. So for now, since we're on a disagreement on this one, we leave it as is and vote on it on Monday.
I would say that because we need to move on to other sections.
Right.
Yeah, it's already six
It,
thirty.
yeah,
Yeah.
that, I agree, that's fine. That's, but it isn't so much limited to that. If there's something that's, can be added and it's not part of this, we can do that as well. Okay, so moving on. Establishes and maintains efficient procedures and effective controls for all expenditures of school funds. Sorry. In accordance to the adopted budget, subject to the direction and approval of the board. That basically is that he operates within the constraints of the approved budget. And I don't see the problem with that. No concerns? Okay, maintains or has maintained adequate records for the schools, including financial accounts, business and property records, and personnel, school population, and scholastic records. No problem with that for me. Okay, moving right along. Provides suitable instructions and regulations to govern the maintenance of the school properties. We haven't been using regulations, and that's one of the things that this format is. So I'm indifferent if we want to leave regulations there or keep it as we're doing with saying policies.
Change that, right?
Yep.
From instructions and regulations to instructions and policies. And most of the policy reviews I've been involved with.
Yep. So are people okay with it going forward as policies, instructions and policies? Okay. Next one, provide suitable instructions and regulations, same thing, to govern transportation of students. Assumes responsibility for the use of buildings and grounds. I don't understand that one, but
Well, like in all our meetings, people ask to use the building for after-school program or for the church that's gonna use it, or for games, so he makes sure that the people coming into the school are following all procedures. That's my understanding of that.
okay, recommends the locations and sizes of new school sites and additions to existing sites, the locations and sizes of the new buildings and plans for new buildings, all appropriations for the sites, the buildings and improvements, alterations and changes in the buildings and equipment of the district. Yeah. I like this particular parameter because it's recommends. And so I'm very much in agreement with that. Oversees the processing and submission of required reports. Interprets the budget and finance to the community and finances. Remains current on new legislation and implements laws to the best of the advantage of the district. Okay, comments. Everybody okay with that part?
Yes.
Okay. Comments regarding section B. Attends and participates in all meetings of the board and its committees except when excused by the board. Takes prompt action to implement all directives of the board. Advises the board, I'm sorry, I'm just going fast. Advises the board on the need for new and or revised policies. Hey, it actually says policies. Provides timely advice to the board on implication of changes in statutes and regulations affecting education. No, that's the states, and the state does have regulations, and that's why the differentiation. See, informs and advises the board about programs, practices, and problems of schools. Would that be at schools? Well, it doesn't matter. And keeps the board informed of the activities operating under the board's authority. Next one is prepares and submits to the board recommendations relative to all matters requiring board action, placing before the board such facts, objective information, and reports as needed to ensure the making of informed decisions. Next is develops and implements rules and policies in keeping the board policies. Acts as chief public relations agent for the district. Acts on own discretion if action is necessary in any matter not covered by board policy, and reports such action to the board as soon as practicable. Practicable? Makes sense. And recommends the policy guidance in the future. Ensures that all policies are evaluated in accordance to the schedule established by the board. I'm sorry. All employees, I'm sorry, I missed it altogether. Ensures that all employees are evaluated in accordance to the schedule established by the board. Determines assignments, defines the duties, and coordinates and directs the work of all employees in the district. Communicates to all employees all actions from the board relating to personnel matters, and receives from employees all communications to be made to the board.
So I just as like, cause he oversees like individual people, is there anything that about like him as a boss? I know that, I don't know how to say that, like as a, you know,
I think that's what that means, the first one.
which is evaluated, but like even your, how do I say, like, relationships with the people you work with. Not just that you're evaluating them, but like relationships.
Maybe the third one, maybe communication.
But it says communications to all employees, all actions of the board relating to personnel matters, and receives from employees all communications to be made to the board. So to me, that's just communication one way, but what I'm thinking is like, because usually on evaluations, most of the evaluation I've seen, it's about like, relationships with the people, your peers, like peer relationships, overseeing, you know what I'm talking about? Does it make sense?
Like if you're a team player, how you
Yeah.
work with others.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Something like that.
I think something like that is important too, because you are brand new and your relationships with the people you work with are important, because you're also, excuse me, not only the principals, but you deal with the directors, stuff like that, where it doesn't hit that here. I think,
I didn't see it in any of those.
yeah, I didn't see it in any ways. I think that's an important one. How are you as a boss?
I was thinking management, but it's
Yeah,
not
it did,
listed.
if that's all financial, is what I was looking at that.
This was in our box. Oops, sorry, just handing them out. This is. Did you get yours by any chance? Any coincidence? Yeah.
Oh.
And this is. Okay.
So what do you guys think? Do you think that would be okay? Like a
Having
relationship?
like a relationship question in personnel,
Yeah,
or would it be more appropriate in management?
well, that's what we're looking at. Management seems to be more financial. And his relationship with the, like, committees and communication to the board.
Which one are we looking at now?
Elizabeth was just mentioning that adding something in that talks about his collaboration and teamwork with who he supervises. So I'm sorry, Elizabeth, were you saying that it would fit in
Personnel and D.
personnel? We could add one.
What about like establishing and maintaining positive relationships with all stakeholders?
Yeah, there you go, that's good.
Should I put that for personnel?
Yes.
Can you say that one more time?
Establishing and maintaining positive relationships with all stakeholders.
And do you think it's possible that we could number or like, A for education and say A1, A2, A3, just so when we're talking about them, we can reference them? Can we
This
change
is a
that?
PDF, I think, in our new
Yeah,
policy.
it's a
so-
PDF. And so can we edit it to have numbers just for ease of
so
talking about it?
A1, A2, A3, and A4.
I mean, if that's okay with everyone else. I just know for me, it helps me, if I get lost, I can say, oh, where are we? Oh, we're on B2. And
That makes sense.
I know what we're talking about.
It makes sense for.
You're saying in lieu of the bullet,
Somebody submitted something anonymously that deals with how this section in, oops, did everybody get this, or I just found 2 copies?
No, I just got this yellow.
Okay. And so I would assume they would not want them to be addressed in this evaluation because it's titled Superintendent Evaluation Questions. And just for the purpose of a workshop, and this is public comment, I'll go ahead and share that.
Point of order. I don't know if, this, even though it is an evaluation of him, we still have to keep, he's still a personnel, and we still have to keep certain things confidential. And I don't know if this would be part of that. I was looking at the PowerPoint that we had here.
It was on the one we just looked at, it's on the first page.
On which one?
It has to be done in executive session if it's
Yes, yes.
everything.
It has to be done in the executive session
So-
and then discussed, and then if we need to vote on it or discuss it, decide what we can speak to publicly and then share that with the public.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's this public attacks on the superintendent, violation of personnel rights. I just think that maybe this could be taken.
If it were a person that was in attendance, they would be within their rights to bring up these concerns. And granted, it's within our discretion to say whether that should be terminated or not in terms of as it's being discussed. The document doesn't say that there's been any wrongdoing, or it's certainly written in a negative way.
So could we review that as a board prior to discussing?
review that too.
And the way I'm reading it, it is, could be considered a public attack on the superintendent, which we're not supposed to allow. Even if a person was here in person, we're not supposed to allow those types of attacks.
So what basically, I get what you're saying, is there's a way to say what you need to say without,
And
yes.
And I'm not sure that that's not being met. The person doesn't say that there's been negative things that's happened and doesn't mention anything specifically, but he certainly cites things that are could be negative. And to respond to that, we'd say that similarly, that we have an evaluation system that would, if those occurrences transpire, the evaluation would allow us to rate that person accordingly.
Well, I
But-
think some of these questions are kind of included in our evaluation that we just discussed, right?
I think there are probably
Relationship.
better way than this is written.
Where did I put my thing? The relationship with stakeholders.
Yeah.
It's answering these questions. And yes, they may be questions, but they are framed in such a way that they can be viewed as a personal attack, and I just don't feel comfortable going down that road.
I agree with Ms. Murillo.
Okay. Again, this is not a venue where majority rules. This is a venue where people can articulate, and if the person is not here to articulate, there's no real obligation.
Can I interject? This is somebody's handwriting. So it's obviously somebody that could be identified by handwriting. And so it could be viewed as, I know people's handwriting that I work with. I could tell you who wrote what. So, I mean, like, we should have discussed this in, you know what I mean?
Well, number one, I didn't even know this document existed till just a second ago. So number two is that if I try to consider this in the format of a workshop and the person being present, that's really where I'm trying to make a decision on as to the reading of it is, I wouldn't say an attack. It is certainly a very negative, it's done in very negative connotation. And I don't know of the harm that would be done necessarily, because it does not say any particular, it's not specific to any particular action. It's certainly particular to, it's indicative of a person that feels very wronged by the current administration. And in that context, we can look at this as our own selves, by ourselves, and I see that these items will be looked at and can be communicated, particularly in terms of what was just proposed by Member Begay in establishing and maintaining positive relationship with all stakeholders. And that, to me, would suffice.
Can we move on and finish this evaluation? Everything that's on the evaluation, is this okay to move forward with this?
No, we should go through them individually until we're done.
I thought we've gone through each one of them.
Yeah.
already.
No, I agree with Mr. President that these concerns that were brought up in these questions, I think establishing and maintaining positive relationships to all stakeholders, I think we'll cover that. And
Yes. And I agree with you. I think that even to like these, and I get where this person's questions are going. And so like when we do the evaluations, like obviously this was an issue, so we can look at that as well. Like, are these some things that are being managed, or is this an issue? I mean, so this becomes a really like a
Like a
sounding point to manage that, because as part of that as well is that, you know, like that's what I meant is how are you a leader within your own group, right? How are you leading, and what is your relationships with the people you work with? And that definitely leads directly to that point.
And these are the possible comments that we receive in a survey.
Perfect.
And
That's
so,
perfect.
yeah,
Yes.
this is,
Yes.
so we can take that into consideration and move forward with the parts. So in terms of we completed these, let's discuss now what we're supposed to think about in terms of a survey.
Well, I want to ask, what's the difference between O and U on this evaluation? How do we
Outstanding
know-
and
how do we know the
unsatisfactory?
difference? What constitutes outstanding and what constitutes unsatisfactory?
Do we have
In
a,
education, we use rubrics most of the time.
is there a rubric to this, or is
There's
this
not a
just,
rubric,
okay.
no. Everybody here is going to have a different choice probably for each one of these based on their own experiences.
Criteria on evaluations usually is that if you give anything that's on the extreme, either outstanding or does not meet, you have to provide documentation of that.
That's what it says on the note here.
Yeah, that's generally the case. It wasn't the case in the 4 years that I was here, but nevertheless. So regardless of a rubrics, there needs to be justification for what that person thinks the performance is. The person can't just rate way to the outstanding or the does not meet without having something to say as to what put that person in that category. I'm not familiar with the rubrics. In-
As educators, we probably fix
right?
So I get what he's saying. So for example, like keeps the public informed. So to what level does he meet exceptional or doesn't meet exceptional keeping? So I sent him, I posted one notice in the press this week, every week. Is that outstanding or is that just a minimal? And so like to me, I'm involved in social media. I do a lot of stuff. So no, that's not to me, but to you, that might be. And so that's what it's become subjective. So with the rubric, we can say, okay, what is considered outstanding for this, and how do we gauge that for this?
Okay, I'm not opposed, I'm just unfamiliar, that's,
that.
so,
It'd be another whole new work session.
Yeah.
without the rubric. It'd take a while.
Could we possibly align it with, like the teacher evaluation language, not demonstrating, developing, applying, and innovating?
I like that.
again, I'm not familiar, so if I
And-
see it. then
Well,
I would know.
so on this, it says we really only, if we check satisfactory, that's really the only area where we don't have to provide specific information. So if, and you're right, this evaluation, it's going to be subjective. But maybe having comments, instead of just regarding section A, you could have comments for each section. So if I say, keeps the public informed about modern education practice, and I mark him outstanding, I can list right away, this is why I marked you outstanding in this area, or needs improvement, rather than having it just for this whole
So comments for
subsection,
each section.
for each number. Yeah, I think that would allow us to provide input. But I think, I don't know, rubrics would be tricky in this instance because we're all pretty new.
But I think it would give us a parameter to kind of see, well, what does this mean, right? And so what does that look like at an exceptional level, right? And to me, like right now, I would see, what he does. Oh, that is because he's doing it, but this is what could be exceptional. And I mean, I know I'm going kind of, but if we're going to really be honest about it, I think it would be beneficial to kind of gauge it. And if we need to change because of, further knowledge or future knowledge, then that's what we could do.
I think in terms of the constraints, probably using this evaluation for the 6-month one, which is June, January, would probably not be a bad idea, and going through rubrics from then on would probably work.
But I agree with Ms. McGay. I think we need to do the needs development. I think that's great.
I'm open to whatever, but I know that change is going to be a little bit time consuming. So I'd rather get to the point of getting the surveys out and getting the responses, and then having the rubrics in place for the final evaluation. I think would be fine.
Okay.
And so those are options that we can discuss. So do we want to get into the survey at this point?
I have one more, I guess, point about the evaluation. So the administrative code that tells us what we are supposed to include in the evaluation criteria, it has 9 different things. Have we made sure that those 9 are included in this evaluation? I know we're kind of trusting the policy of NMSBA to have included these 9, but I think that's something we should look at, or maybe I mean, looking at it briefly, it does seem to be included, but maybe doing a cross check before before we agree on it.
And, can you email that? Or can you read it
Sure,
to me?
I mean,
Or you can read
that's
those
all of it.
The whole thing?
No, so it's New Mexico Administrative Code 6.69.3.8, which was in our PowerPoint. That's why I looked it up. And it gives you on part C, it says each school district shall include the following competencies and indicators as part of the evaluation criteria. One is the administrator demonstrates foresight, examines issues, and takes initiatives to improve the quality of education in the community. And then after that, it's A, B, C, and D, which, might be included in this education that we have in the evaluation. But I think it would be important to make sure we're following this and then just do a cross reference to make sure everything's included. And I can email you guys the link to the administrative code.
I would appreciate that. So is it your suggestion we do that with the 6-month one or the annual one, or both?
Maybe the annual, since we're kind of getting it close to the 6-month. But I mean, looking over it briefly, it looks like everything's included. I just want to make sure.
Well, in the interest of time, if you have something that you identify as something that's missing that you think is worthwhile pursuing, you can definitely bring that up on Monday, on the next following Monday. Anybody else? Okay. So the surveys for the 3 different populations, students, teachers or faculty, or I should say employees, and then public. With regards to education, which one are we going to do first? We're going to do the students or the teachers?
Teachers and staff.
Okay, let's work on that one. So education, are they given an opportunity to provide input?
Do you think it would be more beneficial to have it more open-ended questions?
I do. I think that, I think doing that then allows people to add their own, you know what I mean, insight or their own views and anything like that. And it allows kind of like for broader data
And
instead
like-
of yes, no, right?
Just, what's going well, what needs improvement. And then we can look for overall themes that are presented. I don't know. I just think it would be, when I get surveys, I would prefer the opportunity just to voice my opinion.
I agree with that.
So example of the questions, and what would you propose then for questions?
What are the strengths of the district or the superintendent, and what are the areas for improvement? Opportunities for growth.
And perhaps what are suggested changes?
Yeah, maybe if they have
Well, areas for improvement. that's the
areas
same
for
thing.
improvement,
that'd be
and
the
then
same
maybe they, in areas for improvement, if they have specific ideas, right? If your area of improvement is creating a more positive culture, that's pretty broad, but maybe they have specific ideas. We want a district-wide Christmas party, just leaving it kind of open for them to offer suggestions.
And that to me is kind of like the detriment of the open questions, is that if we're looking for performance issues, we may not get that. We may get more off topic suggestions, such as you mentioned, a Christmas party or something else along those lines. Um,
Well, to me, that's not off topic, right? It's establishing positive relationships. And if I feel that's missing and that's a possible solution. So maybe areas of strength, areas for improvement, possible solutions,
So
if they have any, and making it optional, all of them, right?
so,
Because if that's a big issue to me, it might be off topic to you, but it's a really big deal to me. We aren't to discredit that.
no, what I'm getting at is we have different categories here that we're going to be trying to get data for. And one is education. And if there's a mention of a Christmas party there, I'd say it's off topic because it's not dealing with the provision of education. It's not dealing with the curriculum. It's not dealing with the style of administering, it's not giving whether it's supported, not supported, whether it's consistent, inconsistent. That's the data we should be trying to obtain if we're going to make an evaluation on it's related to education.
Well, I wasn't seeing as putting these questions in any certain categories because for, some education, they don't have any insight, they don't have any input, but they're really concerned about management and they should be able to voice that. And like I said, looking for overall themes, like what's coming up a lot. And then we would figure out, oh, okay, that goes in the management. That's a management issue versus education. What are areas of strength, areas of weakness? Management, what are areas of strength, what are areas of weakness? I think we could just do an overall. That was my idea, that we just do an overall, get input and look at it from there and go from there.
So I know, like, to do both, you could do like education and just an education broad, right? And then I found this, it's just online. And what are his strongest points? What are his weakest points? What can the employee do to be more effective or make improvements? And then there's one that says, what are the most important accomplishments over the past year? What are the weakest areas and how could they improve? And then, something like that, very specific. So education, and maybe do it like that, strongest, weakest points, more effective or improvements, and then do it on each one if we want to get, and then allow that like language in each one if that would make sense. And so it's more broad, so it does hit each topic. And so maybe put a little summary under education. So what are we looking for education? And then so like we could add some of this information and say, well, how does he develop, coordinate? You know what I mean? Like, a little, just a synopsis so that when the staff's looking at it, they're gonna know. Educate, hello, it's the same language across the board. And so when you do that, I think that'll be a lot more beneficial, and then allow for comments. And then we can get that data. Well, maybe like, like for the personnel, like we really, we're having issues with personnel or party or collaboration or team building would be really great for us. And eating and drinking is always fun. So like, yeah, Christmas party. Right. And I get that. Like, I understand that, that's the best way to like make friends.
So can we agree then that we'll do it in the sections as we started out in terms of doing it in education, management, and then board?
So A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
Okay.
Board and
Yeah.
personnel.
That.
Okay, so put together conceptually then, you had great examples for education.
And I just clicked up.
So if you can take that part over, I'd really like that.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to say them right now? I'll have to go back and look. I'm gonna. Okay. And so it's just a basic form. And it just says, what are the employee's strongest points? What are the employee's weakest points? What can the employee do to be more effective or make improvements? Or what you could even, yeah, weakest areas, how could, like, I don't know. That's what I was saying. In this area, so yeah, so you could say with the summative little thing, say, well, what are the employees, what is the superintendent's strongest points in education? Well, he did this, and this, weakest points. I mean, so it really identifies.
And it would be specific to the superintendent, and that's certainly what we're targeting for. I just wonder if it is that a person would say that, he's done this and it's that's working really well, but there should be an opportunity for them to say that, this curriculum is not good for our students. There's,
Oh, yeah, but so what I'm thinking is like, we're looking at the evaluation, so, but we're not looking at the I mean, it does curriculum, but I mean, we're evaluating him as a leader.
yes, but if it is that we're using the wrong curriculum, then that would be something that he's also to be evaluated on.
Yes.
So we make it specific to him as opposed to an overall. We just say, we go to the part of, is this having the impact that we need on our students? Something to that effect.
Oh, and then too, obviously, if you're doing staff and students, as a staff, as a teacher, that's your main goal, period.
Yeah.
And so that's, I don't know, that's kind of like a already understanding regarding that. I don't think it needs to be said. So my main goal as a teacher is to what? Educate kids
Yeah. So we're asking, how is the superintendent doing in this?
in this education, but I don't think it needs to be stated how is he overseeing, the kids are being taught well. I think that's overstating the obvious. And then at the end, say, do you have any suggestions? Or do you have any, you know what I mean?
I think that part would be important, the part, making sure that they have an opportunity to say.
At the end, yeah.
Yes.
So like, what, do you have any insight or what would you recommend or however we want to say
Yes.
that at the bottom? And then we can allow, and I think even to allow as much as we need to, like even allow people to upload stuff or people to like write as much as they want. Yeah, I think that would be important just for us to really see it. And I think that in doing that, it allows us to really gather real information that we probably wouldn't be privy to.
And then in management,
All the same thing.
the same thing.
Exactly. We do the same questions for each area because they're pretty general and it hits all the things you need. But then the little summative on the top, what does management mean? It means that because I think like with management and this one, it's really financial. And to me, management in my mind was personnel, where it hits the personnel, so I think we really need a little summative area where it says, this is exactly what this area means, finance, or you know what I mean?
Maybe we could have a link to this evaluation so that they can
Oh,
see
I love that.
this is what we mean by education. These are the areas we're looking at to kind of give them a
Yeah, I like
idea.
that.
Yeah,
A hyperlink.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
I like the idea of a hyperlink, but I think expecting people to do this, well, staff, we can expect more, but with students and or parents,
I think,
the hard copy is good.
no, I think, I think right now is most parents, so you're thinking of school-aged children. And so like, and I get that, but I think most people are very computer savvy and would understand the hyperlink at this stage of life. And if they didn't, then maybe have a copy, say maybe picked up in this, from the office from here to here, if somebody needs that. But to save time and money, and if they had come to the office and they say, I'm looking for this, then the secretary can be more than happy, I'll make you a copy right now, and then hand it to the person.
Because even students can, I mean, they're so tech savvy, they can help their
6-year-olds.
parents do it,
And they're gonna
or grandparents.
They're gonna be doing this off their phones. I mean, it's gonna be an easy survey.
Or Chromebooks.
Or
Yes.
Chromebooks.
Ooh. You had to mention Chromebook. There are a lot of elderly people that are in this community, and I think we should make the effort to accommodate those people individually, whether it's 5 or 10. And so having it in hard copy for those that want to have it in hard copy, I think is essential.
Agreed, but then that person can come to the office
Mhm.
or say, could you mail me a copy? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the option.
However, we can make it convenient.
Yes,
to-
I agree with that, but I mean, overall, we need to send the hybrid. I think you're
So I
gonna
should
hit
just
about
request with.
95% of people would do the
know,
online.
In a side topic, people have told me, we don't like the idea of having to pay online or pay with a card or something. We want to be able to come in with money and pay to go to a game. And where everybody else is moving to the tickets on their phone and stuff like that, there's a lot of people that are upset with that here. And that's just not where this community is headed. I don't think it's we need to make the accommodation, and it's already agreed to, so that's
Oh,
not
and
an issue.
I agree with that, but what I'm saying is that for before that would have been the larger percentage, now it is the less of the percentage.
Yeah, certainly, but it's an important
Yes, I agree.
component, yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, then, think we have anything else? Okay, I guess we are adjourned. You don't need a motion? I think that we're adjourned.
Look at us in under 2 hours.